Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Thursday to you. We are going to talk in depth today about the storm system in the south central U.S. that is going to cause us some major issues in the eastern United States here this weekend into next week, as the storm is expected to strengthen quickly and become not quite a nor'easter, but a storm that is going to be very impactful to the eastern U.S. with heavy rain, strong winds. Hard to believe that we're only 10, 11 days away from Christmas, and we haven't really had a winter storm yet in the east, but we definitely have some nasty weather to talk about, some that's going to do some damage. So this storm will be damaging, not in the sense of what we saw last weekend. This is not going to be a tornado outbreak. Instead, a quickly deepening storm that's going to produce some flooding rain, very powerful surf on the East Coast, and for a lot of folks, potentially some destructive wind that's going to take down some of those Christmas decorations, holiday decorations, if you will, going to cause some power outages here in the Southeast and maybe up into New England as well. And on the backside, colder air is going to follow with it. So we could be talking about some wintry weather in the interior of the Northeast. Here's a current look at the water vapor imagery. And I'm going to kind of show you where our features are here laid out. So this is the upper level low here in the Four Corners region right now. Southerly flow around it is producing some very heavy rain here or heavy snowfall, I should say, in the Rockies into the high plains. I'll talk a little about that. I know it's not a super populated area, but certainly a very dangerous day for travel, at least in the morning here in New Mexico and eventually into southeast Colorado, kind of in this region here. What you see down here is a greater trough that digs all the way down into the Eastern Pacific and sends all of this moisture aloft. That's all these high and mid-level clouds over the southern United States. So we've got a cutoff low here, going to take its time moving through the southern United States. Then a bigger trough here moving into the Northwest this weekend will follow it. And the two look like they're going to phase somewhere in here. And when a storm phases, what it will do is intensify and bomb out, and produce some lower pressure. And when you got lower pressure in the storm center, then just like a tropical system, you have increasing wind. And for many of us here across this region, a high amount of wind is expected. And as the next trough pushes through on the backside, we're going to get a cold, blustery wind causing some potential issues here in the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley region as well. This storm's going to be around into next week. I'm going to talk about kind of what's changed in the forecast here in the coming days. And we're going to kind of take a look at the most likely scenario modeled by the European model. The GFS is not a lot different, but there are some details that are somewhat different. So what you're looking at here is the upper level chart. Brighter colors indicate higher heights and higher pressures aloft. That's where our ridges of high pressure are, kind of our higher, warmer, milder air. And then the darker colors indicate colder air aloft. This is where our stormier weather is. And right now, over the Four Corners region is where we see everything. As we move this along in time, things do progress. And you could see our upper low kind of weaken. So not very intense looking at this point for Friday night. But as we get into Saturday, what we see is this northern branch feature dropping down from the Dakotas. That is going to intensify low pressure in the Eastern Gulf. This is Saturday night, and you see kind of two separate features that are starting to merge and phase into one bigger feature. And that is going to get stuck here because we have a strong area of high pressure over Atlantic Canada later Sunday into Monday. And as it gets stuck, we see another piece of energy dropping down, another storm system moving down from central Canada Sunday night into Monday morning. And what that's going to do is phase with our storm coming up the East Coast and kind of give it a kick of energy, kind of a boost here, an energy drink, if you want to call it that, here for Monday into Tuesday. And when it does that, this colder air aloft picks up our moisture and leads to a switch over to some wintry weather across interior parts of the Northeast. Time frame for that could be on Tuesday. But you can see for those of us in the Carolinas up the East Coast, our wind flow allows lots of moisture to come up from the south. And our surface pattern allows stronger pressure and stronger amounts of wind. And unfortunately, it's not going to be just a quick hitting storm like you would have with a tropical system. This is going to be a multi-day event that lasts us into next week. We finally rid the eastern United States of unsettled weather towards the end of next week. You can see this pushes out Thursday and Friday, just in time, though, for more storm systems to come our way in what is pretty typical for an El Nino pattern, and that is storminess over the southern and eastern U.S. and California, ridging over central Canada, allowing the cold air to get trapped farther to the north and all the unsettled weather to track through the southern U.S. And this is what we've been talking about in the winter forecast here for several days. Now we're starting to see that come to fruition. So I do want to show you our model, our European model surface chart here. The blues indicate snow, pinks are mixed precipitation, green is red, and or green is rain. I'm sorry, rain, not red. Green is red. What is all right, getting crazy here. But as we move through the end of the week here, you see high pressure builds into the east. That is going to lead to some dry, chilly weather. The exception being in South Florida, where we do have a moist easterly flow and a stall boundary producing some rain showers on the East Coast. Now, as this storm digs down into Texas, what it's going to do is allow low pressure to form in the Eastern Gulf. This will happen on Saturday, and this is going to bring a much nastier day to the Sunshine State on Saturday. Pretty much an all-day rain event, especially in South Florida, but even on the West Coast where that rain is certainly needed. And we're also going to see some lighter amounts of rain on the Central Gulf Coast states. As we head into Saturday night, this low ejects northeast and deepens. That is because this area of low pressure aloft is going to pick it up, lead to a negatively tilted trough, and allow our pressure to drop. As the pressure drops, winds ramp up, rain rates ramp up, and we're probably going to deal with a little bit of severe weather and storminess here in Florida, especially South Florida, and maybe up into the Eastern Carolinas, but a bigger amount of rain moving northward, right on through the Carolinas into the Northeast eventually as we get later in the Sunday night into the first part of Monday. And this turns into an all-out rain and windstorm, one that's going to be very difficult to be outdoors in. So if you do have festivities planned for Sunday and Monday, you're obviously going to have impacts from this storm system, ranging from heavy rain to maybe thunderstorms for the coast to maybe a switch over to some snow in the higher elevations here as we head into late Sunday night, Monday morning. Now, this low eventually travels northward into Atlantic Canada. You see the moist feed, kind of this low-level jet out of the south, bringing heavy rain into eastern New England once again. Gosh, it looks just like a repeat of last week, minus the severe weather. I don't think we see that. But the heavy rain, the gusty winds at the coast of New England, Atlantic Canada, colder air following, and we see a switch over to some snow. So the difference today in the models is that rather than that low coming up the East Coast, it now has the low tracking up through the Piedmont, and this sends moisture back into the eastern part of the Tennessee Valley and allows the colder air to follow up with it and that rain to switch over to some snow. And we could see snow flurries falling all the way into middle Tennessee, into middle Kentucky, northern Ohio, eastern Michigan here by Monday night, Tuesday morning. Probably not a big deal outside of the mountains, but something we'll be watching. But the wind ramps up here. You see these tightly packed isobars of pressure. This is where we have a strong gradient between this deep low pressure in eastern Canada and a strong high pressure that'll be building down into the plains. And that the more tightly compact those lines are, the more wind we're going to be dealing with on the backside. There's a lull in between here behind this low and before this trough swings through, but wind should ramp back up on the East Coast. Europeans showing kind of a secondary low forming here, kind of that second piece of energy over New England. We'll have to keep an eye on this. It could lead to a sneaky snowfall in the higher elevations of the Northeast on Wednesday, and then lifting out in New England and Atlantic Canada Thursday. And then we'll see quieter weather expected in time for the days leading up to Christmas, but another storm forming in the Southwest here on Christmas Eve. That is likely to move eastward and produce some potentially tricky travel here over the plains on Christmas Eve and then maybe into the east Christmas Day or shortly after. And the timing on that will be uncertain for a while. Really, the only thing that looks guaranteed is going to be this storm coming through Florida over the weekend and tracking up the East Coast here Sunday night into Monday. That is a guarantee. The absolute strength of it, the amount of wind and who sees the heaviest rain is probably still going to vary some, as we're still talking about 84 to 96 hours out. But models are in pretty good agreement at this point. So I'm expecting this forecast to hold relatively tight to what it looks like right now. All right, I'm going to zoom in on some areas to show you guys some more impact here. Let's start in the south central US. And really all of our weather is in the Southwest, heavy mountain snow in parts of New Mexico, Colorado, southeast Colorado. And eventually some snow moving into the Panhandles region here later today into tonight. This is moving pretty quickly. You'll see the moisture linkage here into Oklahoma, Kansas, central Texas here. We'll see briefly heavy rainfall tonight. Tomorrow morning, we see some rain across the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but this is moving along pretty quickly. I don't think we're going to be talking much severe weather. I think we could see a little bit of lightning south of Dallas and places like College Station, Houston, Galveston, Brazoria, Corpus Christi could see some thunder here tomorrow evening. And then this moves along pretty quickly to the east. This is not our main storm. The main storm gets going a little farther east. We'll see some rain across Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee. I don't think we're talking severe weather at this point. We're lacking the amount of moisture we had. This is going to be a cooler, more stable rain. There will be potentially thunder, but this will be kind of a more stable setup than what we saw last weekend. So I don't think we're going to see a repeat, thank goodness, when it comes to tornadoes. Looking at the southeast, this is where the bigger problems are likely to happen. And you can see in South Florida, we're just going to have showery weather here. Maybe a burst of heavier rain by tomorrow afternoon or evening around Miami-Dade, Broward counties. But really, that most of the action is on the Gulf side here. We're going to see heavy rain moving through the Keys here tomorrow night into Saturday morning. Then that rain moves on to Southwest Florida during the day Saturday. Southeast Florida could see very heavy rain Saturday into Saturday night. And then this low should make landfall somewhere on the Gulf Coast of Florida here. Going to look kind of like a tropical system, but it won't have the warm core of a tropical system. But the impacts may be similar with wind speeds over 40 miles per hour, heavy rainfall, and maybe even a little bit of severe weather here in the warm sector. And I think the timeline on that actually is going to be Saturday night, maybe late day in South Florida, but more than likely at night. So while you're sleeping in Florida Saturday night, have a way to receive watches and warnings because there could certainly be some severe weather. A few tornadoes will be possible and some locally strong wind and very heavy rain certainly is a likelihood. Now, Florida should improve quickly on Sunday as this low tracks up into the Carolinas. North of it is where all the nasty weather is going to be. So we're going to see that nasty weather before daybreak in the low country into central Georgia by Sunday morning. And then as you're going to church on Sunday, if you do that, or if you're traveling, this will move very quickly and advance northward into the Carolinas, even East Tennessee. As quickly as it moves in, though, it'll move out. We should start to dry out here by Monday morning, maybe Sunday night at the coast. All the nasty weather is going to come mainly in a 12 to 24-hour stretch from late Saturday night, early Sunday morning into Sunday evening before things very quickly dry out here. Now, farther north, things are going to be a little bit different looking here. And I'm going to kind of lay this out for you guys. Cold, high pressure in place the next 2 days. So we're going to have quiet, chilly weather here until the weekend. Then we'll see a little bit of rain moving into the Ohio Valley Saturday into Saturday night, and then steadier rain moving up into the Carolinas. Oops, sorry about that. And here's the timetable on this right now from the European model. This is going to be 4 in the morning on Sunday. This is 7 a.m. and this is 10 a.m. And you can see an all-out rain over South Carolina, Eastern Georgia, moderate rain over Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. At this point, it's not really cold enough for snow. And then we're going to see just a chilly, nasty rain all day across the mid-Atlantic. So Virginia, eastern West Virginia, much of Maryland, the Delmarva, and then in the afternoon and evening, that stretches up the I-95 corridor into Jersey, into eastern and central PA, into the New York City and the tri-state area here, and then up into New England Sunday night, early Monday. Now, behind this area of heavy rain is going to be the nasty wind. So kind of a sting jet's what we call it, where we've got this feed off of the south and southeast off the water here Sunday evening of strong wind, even though our lowest pressures are over places like Charlotte. But as colder air works in aloft, we could see a switch over to some snow here in the higher elevations. I wouldn't get too excited out of the Smokies. At this point, there's not a lot of cold air in place. It's more dynamically driven than, say, an air mass-driven air mass. So the air mass-driven cold. So the cold air comes from the storm itself, not from the air mass behind it. But as the next trough swings in, we could see a switch over to some light to moderate snow here on Monday, and especially Monday night across the central Appalachians and eventually the Great Lakes region. We could see this secondary low coming up the East Coast. Right now, that's the more uncertain part of the forecast. The European, when it draws the cold air in behind it, does produce some light to moderate snow in the Poconos into New York State. But again, this part of the forecast is more uncertain at this point. But you know, if the upper low sits over New York City, over Eastern PA, over New England, somebody could get a thumping of some snow here at some point Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So something we'll be tracking when we get closer to that time. Right now, that certainty level is still way too low to guarantee anything like that. Now, the Northeast should start off the weekend pretty quiet here. Actually, a decent start. Some chilly morning temperatures, but things moderate. But Sundays when things start going downhill, a lot like last weekend. We see the rain moving in the afternoon. Timestamp on this is a little bit different between the models. I think the European's a little quicker with it. The GFS might be a bit slower. But at some point, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, this rain is quickly going to move northward. Winds are going to quickly ramp up. And then the height of our storm is going to be overnight Sunday night into Monday morning. Very quick advancing storm system. Our lows should move away here. There were some concerns it would hug the coast, but I think this next trough dropping down into Canada It's going to give it enough of a kick in the pants to move it along quickly here. And then as the cold air filters in, the European shows a switch over to some snow, with coastal showers still possible here Tuesday into Wednesday. More on that in the coming days. Let's take a look at the winter weather threat here. Winter storm warnings with very difficult travel in the passes here. Advisories in the purple. And then as we head towards the weekend, we do see the threat for some severe weather, mostly Saturday, late afternoon and evening in South Florida, advancing up the peninsula Saturday night. This will be out of here by Sunday morning, but there could be a tornado or two in here. Locally strong winds, certainly heavy rainfall. Speaking of heavy rain, there is a threat for a small chance for enough rain to cause a little flooding here across the Big Sky country of Texas into southwest Oklahoma. Tomorrow, that threat shifts east to the I-45 corridor, Dallas on down to Houston, and over to the Sabine River. And then the threat will start increasing across Florida here on Saturday, and especially Saturday evening across the entire peninsula of Florida, and a marginal threat farther north into central Georgia, into the low country of South Carolina, southern Alabama, far southern Mississippi, and southeast Louisiana. And I expect that's going to continue to build northward up into the Carolinas, East Tennessee, and Virginia here for Sunday. We don't have that forecast yet, but that's my expectation. Here's our wind gusts forecast, and pretty windy across Florida here through the end of the week, gusts to 30 to 40 miles per hour. As our storm gets cranking in the Gulf, though, Saturday night, winds do ramp up, and we could see widespread wind gusts over 45 miles per hour. It's going to feel like a tropical storm for many of you here in the Southeast, especially on the coast. And I'll zoom in here and show you some more extreme potential, but you can see a lot of wind on the leading edge of this storm, a chilly wind. And then behind the storm, we see wind gusts picking up over the Great Lakes and Mississippi Valley here Monday into Tuesday. Here's a closer look at the Carolinas, because this is where winds are potentially going to get pretty strong. The ridge tops could see gusts over 50 miles per hour Sunday morning, as will the coast, 30 to 40 miles per hour, quickly ramping up, and potentially around Georgetown and into the Myrtle Beach area, into the Outer Banks. Potentially, there'll be some gusts over 50 miles per hour with a ceiling of 70 miles per hour. So this could create some damage, and that's what I'm concerned about. But it's not just at the coast. With our low pressure track coming through the Piedmont, we could also see gusts of 50 miles per hour in places like Fayetteville, Raleigh, Greensboro, and especially into the foothills and mountains region. Near into the northeast of Asheville, there could be wind gusts close to hurricane force. So pretty nasty wind here leading out. We're also going to see gusty winds around the Great Lakes early on in the weekend, and then especially into Monday and Tuesday as the cold air pours in, gusts over 40 on the lakes. We're looking at 50-mile-an-hour gusts. And then the Northeast is also going to get potentially shellacked here. We'll see some gusty wind Friday out ahead of this, but really our strong winds come in Sunday night, Monday morning, just like this last storm. Same areas, ridge tops see gusts to 50 to 60, coastline 60 to 70, and we could see strong winds into Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and down East Maine early next week as well. Rainfall from the European is going to be pretty heavy here, 1 to 2 inches, generally speaking, in an area that could use it. Coastal waters are not going to see quite as much rain until you get well offshore here tomorrow into Saturday. But generally speaking, between 1/2 inch and maybe 2 inches over the Western Gulf states. Most of that comes later tomorrow into Saturday. The Eastern Gulf states is where the rain will be copious. We see it in South Florida today into tonight. Amounts up to 2 to 3 inches in the Keys, and then it really ramps up Saturday and into early Sunday, with many parts of the Southeast looking at over 3 inches of rain, potentially quite a bit more. And that feed continues on through the spine of the Appalachians into the Northeast here, where I'm going to show you some pretty significant rain in just a second. Looking at South Florida, this is the European model. Most of this comes over the weekend, especially Saturday and Saturday night, but the potential for 6, maybe 8, maybe 9 or 10 inches somewhere here in South Florida into the Keys. The peninsula, generally speaking, 2-3 inches, locally 4 to 6, and heavy rain comes up into the Carolinas here. We're going to see quite a bit of that falling here, especially Saturday night and Sunday. Amounts could exceed 5 inches through the Midlands of South Carolina into Western North Carolina. If the shifts east, Raleigh gets involved. If it shifts west, we see more in upstate South Carolina, where we do need that rain, although it's going to be a lot. And there could be heavy rain at the coastline as well. And in the Northeast, we are also looking at some significant amounts of rain coming up northward here. New England, once again, you guys seem to get crushed with heavy rain. There could be a 2 to 4 inch rainfall here. Watch those rivers and creeks. We are certainly going to be watching that concern for flooding as well. Eastern Great Lakes also have a chance of seeing some significant rain. Here's a look at kind of the timeline in Florida. It's wet in Southeast Florida and the Keys today, tonight, into tomorrow. But here comes the big rains on Saturday. Very wet in South Florida. There could be severe weather down in here as well by Saturday evening. This is 10 p.m. and then this advances quickly northeast and leaves the area on Sunday morning with much quieter weather to follow. It'll be turning chillier as well. We could see quite a bit of lightning building up here with this wave of rain and maybe severe weather, and mainly going to be Saturday evening for Southwest Florida, Saturday night for Central Florida, and late Saturday night, East Coast, overnight Saturday night into Sunday morning. And then things quickly leave the area. You'll see things quickly moving up through Georgia and South Carolina late Saturday night into Sunday. Very heavy rain possible here, depending on where the low tracks. And there will be some lightning potential at the coast, some strong winds as well here. I think we could see a marginal risk for the low country along and east of 95 here, moving up into North Carolina on Sunday. Even though it'll be kind of chilly, it'll be pretty unsettled. And then North Carolina and Virginia into Eastern Kentucky, very wet, some snow potential in the high elevations Sunday night. And then that advances into West Virginia, Western Virginia here on Monday morning. And then cold air flow produces some light to moderate snow in the higher elevations. Not so concerned about what's going to happen here. This shouldn't stick, but something we'll keep an eye on here Monday night and Tuesday. And we could see some lightning here as well on Sunday. Places like Charlotte, Fayetteville, Laurinburg, and then spreading northward up towards Charlottesville Sunday evening, but not a lot of lightning at that point. The bigger concern in the elevational areas here is going to be some snow, and we could see 2 to 6 inches depending on your elevation in the Carolinas. 1 to 3 over West Virginia, maybe an inch here in northern and eastern Kentucky into the Cumberland Gap here and the Cumberland Plateau. But your higher elevations are favored Monday into Tuesday for seeing some of that snow. The Great Lakes area will see some snow as well, especially across northern Minnesota, northwestern Wisconsin could see a few inches here on Friday. That advances into eastern Canada, and then as the cold air moves in here on Tuesday, we'll see greater amounts across eastern Canada, and maybe if we have low pressure coming up into New England, potential for a few inches to fall here as well over parts of New York State. And then finally, looking at temperatures here, going to be chilly at the rest of this week, then warming up this weekend, but still a chilly rain here. You can see what the blues are. This is going to be where things are cloudy. It's just going to be really nasty before things start warming up briefly at the coast. It'll be very mild in the Northeast, but very mild doesn't necessarily mean we don't see some snowfall as the colder air pours in here. So notice how it gets colder next week for much of the Southeast and eventually the mid-Atlantic states. So we could see enough cold air in place for some snow before temperatures moderate here a little bit, but it doesn't really get warm in the Southeast. It stays below average here right on into the weekend leading up to Christmas time. And here's a look at our temperature forecast for the Northeast. You'll see how chilly it is tonight into tomorrow, then warming up Friday and especially on Saturday. But as our storm comes up the coast, going to feel a little bit tropical here, 50s on Monday, but look at this cold air advancing right behind it. We'll see a switch over to some snow. Same places in the 50s will be in the 30s here by Tuesday, and even colder as we head towards next weekend potentially. So I appreciate y'all's time today. I am hitting the road. I'm actually heading to Texas for a few days for work. I may get a video out this weekend. If it happens, it's probably going to be Sunday morning, just to be honest with you guys. But I want to give all the credit to God. He's my end credits. He's the reason I do what I do every day. As a meteorologist, I feel like this is my calling, my gift from God is to share the weather with you guys, get you prepared for dangerous conditions. 2 Timothy 1 says that 7 through 9, for God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Be not thou therefore ashamed of the testimony of our Lord, nor of me his prisoner, but be thou partaker of the afflictions of the gospel according to the power of God, who hath saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ Jesus before the world began. The spirit of power and love and a sound mind. I've been a scientist for over 20 years, and I think a lot of folks that are in this field want to see factual data and don't want to rely on faith. They don't want to look at the Holy Spirit that's out there. For whatever reason, they just don't believe that God created the world. They just don't see that. And I'm not going to judge those folks because I've grown up that way as well. But those of us who have chosen to accept that relationship with God are being told not to be ashamed of testifying that our Lord has saved us. He's called us. This is my calling to share with you guys. And it's not according to all the good work we've done. Our value is not in what we do, how much money we make, what we look like, how we take care of other people, but according to the grace of God and his purpose. He gave us Jesus Christ, who died sacrificially on the cross. We are celebrating Christmas. We're not celebrating cold weather, but this season is all because of Jesus Christ. We celebrate his birthday arbitrarily on the 25th. But God has given us Jesus Christ, and that is his gift to us. That is the Christmas gift. That's the Christmas spirit, giving us grace, giving us purpose in this world, and giving us the ability to love others, to bring joy, and to not live fearfully. And I just wanted to share that good news with you all today. It means a ton to me. I pray that it does to you. And if it doesn't, I'm not going to judge you. I know some folks are going to get turned off by my testimony, but it is my story and I'm sticking to it. So I'm happy to pray for you guys. I will catch up with you either towards the weekend or early next week. I hope all of you stay safe and dry here this weekend, and we're going to talk again here soon. Have a blessed day. See y'all soon. Take care.